So we'll go ahead and start off here then. Hello, this is DC with Common Space Game Cafe, and I am talking with two fellows behind Absurdist Productions, one of the first local game companies that we started working with professionally. If you both want to go ahead and introduce yourself, kind of your experiences and stuff like that, how about we go David first?
I'm David Thomas. I'm one of the co-owners and game designers at Absurdist Productions. Um, and yeah, I'm not sure what my background kind of will sit too. I have a background in education and did educational games for a while, and then always been a board gamer, so started designing tabletop games.
I'm Will Thompson. I've been playing, working on games for quite a while now. I make educational games for my day job, and a few years ago, Dave and I got together and started this little business.
I will say,
and that's Asha.
I mean, obviously, that is the most important part of every one of our streams with Common Space. Introducing the dogs and make sure that they get enough, human, screen time. So,
Oh yeah.
anyways, I will say myself, it's always been a wonderful pleasure to work with both of you at, whenever we were doing Loot and XP and now going forward into Common Space. I was just wondering, though, I had questions. So, to start with, what inspired you both to form the company together?
So it was kind of interesting. We kind of met like friends of friends kind of thing. Like we knew the same people, and we bumped into each other a few times. I had just left the military, and I had a crazy idea for a card game that eventually became the first game we published, Churrascaria. And I was doing early testing on it back when it was just, handwritten on paper and horribly unbalanced. And at one, just hanging out with friends one night, bumped into Will. He tried the game. We started talking about stuff, and I mentioned I was looking for a job, education related stuff. He was already doing the designing educational games for a living, so got me an interview. I got hired doing that, and while we were working on that, and I continued to work on my game. Eventually, I was like, maybe I can actually publish this myself. Maybe get this out in the world. And when I started talking about that, Will had a bunch of ideas for games he wanted to work on, and we decided, hey, you know what? This would be a lot easier if we worked together. And honestly, I think the decision to become a company was pretty fast. We then spent way too much time trying to come up with a name.
That is true.
We spent a whole lot of time thinking, it's like, okay, there's all these companies that have some kind of animal in their name, so what's like a absurd animal name, and just went round and round forever until we ended up with Absurdist Productions.
Quite absurd indeed. Yeah, I actually didn't really know that story, or you might have told me, but my goldfish memory just went like boop. But yeah, that's really amazing. It's just getting connected and being able to find a kindred spirit to help get these game ideas out from the ether of the minds into people's hands and homes.
And I think one of the things that kind of inspired both of us to say, hey, we can probably do this. One, we both have enough background in in designing things that we knew we could design the good games. But then we know artists, we know people that are in video, we know copy editors, we know all these people that are in all of the skills that you really need to make something work, that we could reach out to. And they give us some decent deals, so we don't have to spend quite as much money, and we can make a good product with a lot of professional, kind of freelance professionals involved that we happen to be friends with, which helps a lot.
Yeah, I definitely think that building the connections with the local community has been really awesome for me, both professionally and ever since starting Loot. Just and Common Space, just a world out there I never would have known about.
Yep.
Yeah, for sure. I think the game the game developer days, the free playtest days at Loot and XP were a huge benefit for us, and I'm looking forward to doing that again at Common Space.
Yep.
I don't think we would have really congealed as a company with the rest of the community here in the Oklahoma City area if it wasn't for that.
Norman, Oklahoma was they were the #1 for number of people that bought backed our first Kickstarter. They were the epicenter of our Kickstarter backers was Norman, Oklahoma, which I don't think most Kickstarters can say that because Norman's not that big.
True. A lot of people do end up wandering off because since it's a college town, they take their experiences to their hometowns, and I really hope that the next game that you all do, whenever the college folks get their hands on it, and then take those experiences back to their home places, near and far, that they'll be able to go, oh my gosh, this is just from this one small town. We need to get that going wider and bigger.
Yep.
I know we kind of touched on, beforehand and stuff like that, but you all are working on a couple different projects. I know there's PaleoVet, and then there's your zine that you all just successfully kickstarted. You want to tell us a little bit about that?
Well, PaleoVet's Will's baby, so I'll let him start on that one.
Yeah, so PaleoVet is a game about being a veterinarian for dinosaurs at a dinosaur park. You are, it is a dice drafting, dice rolling, sort of pressure luck kind of game, where you are rolling dice that have special symbols on them to try and get the appropriate treatments to treat the different dinosaurs that are available. You have to roll tranquilizer darts to sort of tranquilize the dinosaurs and bring them into your hospital, and then you have to roll the right treatments to treat them. Each dinosaur has special effects, either when it appears, or when it's in your hospital, or when you've cured it. And yeah, it's a really fast little 30-minute game that we kind of put together. I just had the weird idea after I watched Jurassic World 2 and decided to put that together. It ended up working surprisingly well, and we've been developing it for a little less than a year now, I think.
Yeah, just about.
And we've started commissioning art for it. And if you look on our Facebook page, I think we've posted a couple of those pieces already, at least on the some blog posts and things. But yeah, that's looking really cool. That game is really close to being done. We're just doing final playtesting and layout and stuff now.
Yeah, I've seen the art, and I know when you were kind of choosing between art styles, that was really tough, in my opinion, because, there's kind of realistic look, the kind of journaling part, and then the one that I felt, is also a little bit more accessible to maybe what I feel like your target audience is, like families and stuff like that, kids who, I haven't met a kid yet who hasn't gone through a dinosaur phase, and every time we do these game developer days, the kids are like, oh my gosh, dinosaurs in a game, I want to try it out.
And for some reason, I don't know why we've done it, but our first game, Portuguese is a primary language that's used on a lot of the cards, so I had to learn how to pronounce a bunch of Portuguese words. And then now we're making a dinosaur game, and we're using the full dinosaur name, so I'm slowly learning how to pronounce all of these dinosaurs.
Which do you feel is harder, dinosaurese or Portuguese?
The dinosaurs, just because there's more of them to learn.
Oh, I think the Portuguese was harder, but I'm
more motivated by food, I guess.
Very true. I will say beyond English, it's.
I was a kid, and that was a big motivation for this too. And Harley loves dinosaurs, and as we were developing it, we started talking about the art style we wanted, and we started talking to Harley's daughter Verlina, who's 11 now, about what kind of art style she wanted, and she leaned more toward a realistic style actually. And several kids we talked to all sounded like they were more into realistic style, but then when you show them the pictures, they like the more stylized, a little bit cartoony style better. So that it's kind of interesting talking to kids like that. But I mean, the game is definitely playable by kids, and for younger kids, we just recommend you ignore the effect text on the dinosaurs, because there's a little bit extra reading, a little bit extra complication. But other than that, it's mostly just matching, so young kids can play it pretty well. But yeah, we were really divided when we started thinking about, do we want this realistic, almost scientific sketch style, or this really stylized kind of
almost story.
Our artist, yeah, it's like a storybook style. Our artist, she mostly had worked on children's books before. It was a really, really tough decision going between those two, and we ultimately just felt that the storybook style just brought something unique to it that I don't really ever see in in anything. You don't see it. You don't see this particular style in board games and card games, but it's also just a unique style to Susanna, our artist, who is doing a fantastic job so far.
Yeah, I really think you're all lucked into just finding the perfect artist for what you're working on. Whenever I saw those combinations like this, this is the dream team right there. So, and it just like with oh my gosh, Cherascaria. That the name of your artist, Ellie, right?
For Cherascaria, it was Ellie was someone we knew from the educational game development studio we were working at. She's now teaching game art at a college, so she's. We were actually talking to her for this game, but she just didn't have the time because she's prepping the next generation.
Fair enough. But yeah, like with each game, I think the art styles definitely just work so well with them, and there's so many games where the theme is there, but the art style just kind of doesn't quite fit with what's going on. So is it you or Will who's kind of been the mastermind for the zine that you guys just kickstarted?
So the zine is it's a result of the fact that Will likes to come to me with insane ideas, and I, for some reason, like to say yes. So Kickstarter for February was doing its RPG zine. They did one last year. This year they decided, hey, it did so well, we're going to launch it again. And so it was basically a thing where you run a 2-week campaign to do an RPG related zine. And so on, I want to say it was like February 3rd or 4th, Will calls me up and goes, hey Dave, you want to do one of these RPG zines? I was like, we have to have the campaign, like everything ready and launch the campaign before the end of February. He's like, we got a week and a half. And I said, sure, why not? So for the actual Kickstarter campaign, what we launched with was a one-shot that I've run previously, that I actually designed specifically for kind of newcomers to D&D, leaning a little bit towards younger players, kind of a dark fairy tale kind of story. And so I took all my notes and started writing those up into, turning them into a actual adventure that someone else other than me could follow and run it. We got the Kickstarter campaign together. Because we happen to know people, we found an artist that we could contract to do some custom pieces for us. We also found a lot of stock art that was going to work to kind of fill in some gaps here and there so it would look good. And we launched the Kickstarter campaign. And we were thinking, hey, we'll get, $200, $300, maybe $400. We ended up getting, just over $1,200?
Just over $1,200, yeah.
Just over $1,200. Which meant that we unlocked a stretch goal that we probably should have set higher, but we unlocked a second adventure in the zine, which Will volunteered to write. So he's been hard at work on that, and we're about 98% done with it, somewhere in that, right around there. Just kind of some fine tuning. Just like it's written out, some fine tuning, and we're gonna balance test the creatures, like the various encounters, to make sure they're not too easy or too hard. But yeah, so starting like February 5th, we started on this thing, and we're just about done with everything written, all the art in there. We're about to get a copy edit pass on it to make sure that we don't have too many horrible typos or things in there, and we should be sending it to get printed here in the next week or two.
Yeah, I think so. It's basically done at this point. It ended up being so it's a zine. So part of the requirements for the thing were that it be a 8.5 by 5.5 booklet, soft cover, staple bound, black and white on the interior. We're doing black and white cover as well, but it's a nice finish on the cover. And it ended up being 60 pages, of 8.5 by 5.5 size pages. So it ended up being a nice little thick booklet that we put together. The art and layout looks really good. I've been also doing the layout on InDesign. It's been a really fun little project to work on. And, $1,200 isn't that much money, especially if you consider all of our expenses and things. But we are still, making a tiny profit off of it. It's been a lot of fun to put together. We're printing up a lot of extra copies beyond what we're selling on Kickstarter, and we're also going to be selling the PDF on our website. And it's been really enjoyable. It's just nice to be able to sit down and write a short little adventure story like this and put something together that's really cool. It's been a blast.
We're already putting together notes on making some more of them in the future. So, this won't be the last one we put out.
That is really awesome. I will say, I think just going back to the name of your company, just all the stuff you're doing, it's just, you have a food game, then a dinosaur game, now an RPG, just everything is so unique. It's just makes you guys really stand out, in my opinion. So that's really awesome. I know I will
and
definitely...
long term, when we look at like our docket of projects, our docket projects long term. I mean, I've got a game I'm working on that's based on being an animal rescue organization. Will's working on one that's kind of nested in Cherokee myths and animal stories. Will's even looking. I got initial stuff on paper for a possible Cherokee themed RPG for the future, and we have a ton of projects we're working on, and because Paleovet's very close to finalized, we're getting the art and everything. We'll probably be sitting down here in the next couple of months to make the decision on what's the next project we're going to be focusing on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, since you've done a Kickstarter with both Churrascaria and your zine, how has your experience with building up Churrascaria through the Kickstarter been similar or different to how you had to do it with the zine?
And technically, we ended up doing Churrascaria twice because it didn't quite make it the first time. Every Kickstarter has been a learning experience. The zine one was the easiest, partially because we had very low expectations, and
very low goal. Yeah.
We purposely, it was purposely kind of a thrown together thing. We wanted it to look professional. We wanted it to look good, but we also weren't putting a marketing push behind it or anything like that. So it was fairly low stress. But we still followed basically the same kind of tenets that we did with Churrascaria. We had roughly the same sections. We wanted to make sure that everything looked good, that we had a good flow through the campaign.
And for the zine, we were also able to leverage our mailing list that we've been building up over time. We were able to push out an update to the backers of the Churrascaria campaign and let them know. And we got a decent percentage from them and from our backers and our mailing list. So that was really helpful, and then one of the biggest things I think was just that the Zine Quest promotion was going on Kickstarter, and so we were able to put their get the game tagged that put their logo on it. People are looking at that, so it makes it a little bit easier to get seen. So the largest portion of our backers for the zine were people that found us on Kickstarter through the Zine Quest promotion. So that made it really easy. And like Dave said, the it's not really that we just sort of threw something together, because it is a really nice, well put together product, but the overhead on building a RPG is definitely less. I mean, it's a lot of work still on the designers and writers, but the overhead of manufacturing and art and all of the other things is way less than it is with a board game.
Yeah, there's a lot less logistics you have to worry about. And then honestly though, even though it was only 2 weeks, I think once the campaign launched, my stress level was roughly the same as with Churrascaria, because I was still checking it constantly and putting in updates, responding with comments.
Yeah, and it was the sort of backer curve on both of them was different too. So with Churrascaria, we got the normal what you expect on Kickstarter, which is a big bump at the beginning, and then a big bump at the end, and a kind of a plateau in the center. With the zine, we got an initial bump at the beginning, and then just like a steady linear curve going all the way to the end, which was a little different. Yeah.
Yeah, which I think partially was because of the very low price point. I mean, so that helped.
Do you think the connection with the zine organization also helped with that too, or?
Yeah, I mean, it being part of the RPG Zine Quest, like Will said, that definitely gave it a bump, because there was a page where people go to and they saw it more readily. It was easier to find. During February, people were actively looking for RPG zines because it was the promotion that was happening. So yeah, that definitely helped push us. And I mean, it did really well considering what we were going for. So,
do you have any recommendations for kind of budding designers to like organizations kind of like that, or anything else that they might be able to get the resources to help them build the games they want to do, or market the games, or anything like that?
For marketing, I think we'd love to find an organization for that too. That's one of the skill areas that we are still learning. I mean, it's you're when you're running your own business, you become the man. As you become the man of many hats. You've got to learn all these different skills. Marketing is the one that I think we still struggle a bit on. Still kind of learning that. So yeah, I mean, for a lot of the other things, there's a couple of organizations out there. There's the Indie Gaming Alliance that once you're to the point where you're going to try to publish, they can be helpful because they give you some discounts on certain things, and they can help a little bit with they do like a small scale distribution kind of thing that you can look into. For manufacturing, there's a ton of some various blogs out there, but you basically have to reach out, get quotes, kind of figure out what you're doing. There's a bunch of different Facebook groups that have been super valuable to both Will and I. James Matthey's blog. James Matthey, unfortunately, he's passed away. He ran Minion Games, but his blog is still up, at least for now, and there's a ton of resources on there. Some of the lists he has of lists of reviewers and stuff are a little outdated, but just the general advice on how things work in the industry, there's great information there. Jamie Stegmaier, a lot of his early stuff from when he was still running Kickstarters on his blog is still very valuable. Some of the trends have changed a little bit, but the general stuff in there is still excellent if you're going to run a Kickstarter.
And these are things that we'll be able to put up on our YouTube video. Whenever we put this up to YouTube, we'll make sure to add links for this and stuff like that too. But sorry, Will, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was going to say the most valuable thing you can possibly do, though, is find your local scene. Yeah. And for us, the playtest days, the Oklahoma Board Game Society, the Dallas Games Marathon for when we traveled down to Dallas, which is, a 3-hour drive, but it was worth it sometimes. But finding these local organizations and communities, these people that you can connect with, to find playtesters, to get people to, fellow designers in your area, all of that stuff, like that organic, actually physically being there with your game kind of stuff is probably some of the most valuable things that we've found. I would recommend that to anybody because, once you get in touch with other people who are doing similar things, you can share ideas, share resources, and get around all that other stuff too.
I mean, here in Oklahoma, the Oklahoma Tabletop Game Designers, their Facebook page and the group that's associated with it, that's been wonderful. Both for, be able to, get people to play test with, seeing, just playing other people's games. Because as a game designer, that's a big thing. Play games. See, look at how things work. Look at what works. Look at what doesn't work. What do you like? What don't you like? And, that kind of basically think of that as research. You start seeing how things work, and then sometimes you play a game, you like a mechanic, and it spins off an idea into your head that creates a whole new mechanic. You can also, if you decide you're gonna self-publish, you know spend time on Kickstarter researching what's out there, what are the trends, what are people buying, what do they seem to like, what do they not seem to like, that sort of thing. And then my core thing is, for me, I'm big on theme and I'm big on design the games you want to play. Sure, there might be a trend right now for big minis games. They're not my favorite, so I'm unlikely to ever design one. But design the games you want to play, because if you enjoy them, if you have a passion for the game you're making, when you demo it for people, when you play test it with people, they're going to see that, and it's going to be infectious.
And ironically, that is why we are all over the place with the genres of games we create. Because we are passionate about a lot of different types of things that we just enjoy, and whereas a lot of companies, they find a niche and they just work into creating like games of a certain type. We're just making whatever works, whatever feels right.
I will say, if possible, and I realize this doesn't work for everybody, but if you can find a design partner, one of the things that makes things work really well for me and Will is we like different kinds of games, and we think about the design of games differently. So I'll make something, I'll show it to him, he'll tear it apart, give me advice, I'll fix it, and vice versa. Because even though I'll have this thing that I think works really well, and then he'll walk in and he'll break it all to hell with one or two actions. I'm like, I never even thought that was possible. And then then I'll do the same thing to his stuff, because we just look at the systems completely differently. And so having someone you can bounce ideas off of, you can throw things at, and see what works.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think it's always better to have two heads over one, but I know that it's always a process, no matter what kind of game you're making or anything like that.
Yeah.
And I definitely feel like it's better to have a kind of a variety of games that different people can enjoy, because some people might enjoy this game, like they might enjoy Terraria, but maybe not so much into dinosaurs. I don't know why, but or vice versa. Like there's a specific company that makes a ton of Cthulhu type products, and it's like, is there anything else you want to do, or is this all you? Okay, that's fine, whatever works for you, and it's working for them very well. Yeah. But I just know that's not my entire shtick or anything. So
yeah. Well,
yeah, I think.
Go ahead.
You go ahead.
It's all you.
All right, I was just going to say, I think that is good advice for a lot of companies, is to pick a niche, pick something that you're known for, and do that thing really well. I think that is really common advice, and I think it's really good advice. It just doesn't work for me. It doesn't work for us. It doesn't work for the fact that we just kind of want to be ADD all over the place making whatever,
Yeah.
I think that's just our thing. Like, that's just what I'm going to continue to do, because it's what I enjoy about the job, and I want to keep enjoying this job, even if it's not my full-time job yet. It's something that I want to really love, and that's part of it, is just being able to jump around and do an RPG one day, and then do a dice game another day, and then do like a Euro game the next.
Yep. And even with designers, we have very eclectic interests. The games we're designing are very eclectic. There are little common elements, you kind of see through them, but nothing that's really strong. But, there's the designers out there who, when you sit down to play their game, it's one of their games because of certain mechanics. Where it's like, okay, this game uses, we have a grid and we have Tetris-shaped pieces and we have to fit them in there somewhere. I know who designed this game.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he's managed to make a ton of amazing games on that very simple, with that core mechanic. Someday, maybe I'll find a mechanic that I'm like, this is my mechanic, I'm gonna stick with it, but I doubt it.
And but yeah, no, I definitely agree, and I think it's just, with everything said, it depends on what you as the designer want, because every game has someone that will want to play it, because ever since we started as a board game cafe, there's been just a exponential curve in how many board games come out there. And, on one hand, that's amazing for the consumers because there's so many different options that you might not have been like, I don't really find any games I like. It's like, if you don't find a game you like now, you just aren't looking hard enough, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's out there.
But I do feel, I might be wrong, but it's also harder to get those breakouts because of how many good games there are now. Because all the games, I feel like, especially in the past, 2 or 3 years, they're just getting more and more polished. As far as, the mechanics go, rulebooks, oh my gosh, someone needs to just be... There needs to be a company of rulebook editors out there. Oh my gosh, they could make bank.
Yeah. I mean, there's not many yet, but I know of 1 or 2 people who that's kind of what they're doing now. They've started just editing rulebooks. There's a lot of, kind of side industries and jobs that are appearing because of the growth of the board game industry. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it also, especially on Kickstarter and stuff, there's a lot of games from 5 or 6 years ago that would fail on Kickstarter now. Because they, when they came out, Kickstarter was easier, there was less competition. Now it's ridiculous.
Yeah, Frosthaven.
Between retail releases and Kickstarter releases and everything, I don't even know how many it is a month now, but it's ridiculous.
It's in the hundreds for sure.
Yeah, and it definitely makes it, your game has to stand out, your Kickstarter page has got to stick out. And you've got to, you can't just build it and they will come now. You've got to go out to them, and it's one of the reasons that I, put so much effort going to different conventions and different events all over the place, just getting out there and playing my game with people, be like, this exists, and please support us. Because it's just going to be harder and harder, and you're starting to see, that's, you can go on Kickstarter, you can definitely see where there's a lot of people who haven't quite caught up with that yet, and you got games on Kickstarter that look neat, they look really neat, and they're never going to fund.
Yeah,
of course, you also have, there's also been some very polished, very pretty, polished-looking games that have come out in the last few years that once you play them, you realize are absolute crap, too. So that is the danger. I mean, it's the danger of board games in general, but it's the danger especially with Kickstarter, where you have a lot less reviews to go on before the game comes out.
Unless the person did 5, 6 different, demo copies that they sent out and everything like that.
Yeah.
People got to try.
Or they were crazy like Lander.
I need to get that game. I need to get a copy of that game. I'm actually going to need to or try to reach out to Dan and see if I can get something set up with him to talk with him about his experiences. But I love that game so much. it just hits all the different niches. Yeah.
Yeah, but they put a lot of money up front that was going to make it very hard to recoup, and unfortunately that's their Kickstarter kind of proved that.
I think it is just also the beginning of the current crisis that everyone's going through with the virus and everything. Really, that was just kind of.
Yeah, that's going to be another thing I suspect, and we're actually kind of in a good place for this because we have our day job still. This is our side hustle. Mm-hmm. But with everything that's going on worldwide, I suspect the sales numbers for board games in particular, because they are a luxury item, we're going to see a drop in sales over the next year or so. It's going to recover. Board games, they're going to come back just as powerful, but we're going to see, smaller indie companies are going to be struggling for the next year or so, I think.
Well, I guess, indie companies, because when I was, going to Walmart to try to find a webcam, because we apparently got the last webcam in the metro area, board games are just flying out the shelves, but it was say, the Pandemics and Settlers and stuff like that. It's because that's what people are...
the stuff you can buy off the shelf right now is great. It's because just people are going to be, they're going to be trying to spend less money. They're going to be less willing to risk it on an unknown game that they're not going to see for a year and a half.
Very true.
Well, it's probably a lot of people just buying games that they know to play with their family as well.
That too.
um, because everybody's at home. Know, you're either at home with your kids, So that's our situation. As a family, we've been playing several board games lately. We haven't really got any new ones in a little while, but yeah, we've been stuck at home playing board games together quite a bit.
Yeah, we've as far as us, we've actually been doing a few like rental deliveries for board games and pickup spots and stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, people are still they're still doing these things. It's just definitely on a much smaller scale because of the current
Yeah.
going on.
I mean, and it may be a contraction or it may be some other shift. I do think a lot of things in the economy are going to shift in a lot of ways that we probably can't fully predict right now.
Yeah.
So, who knows, but I mean, the industry's not going anywhere for sure.
No. Board game. I mean, we're still in the golden age of board games. It's amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's the other thing of paying attention to what's going on out there. Will and I have had a couple of ideas where we started making notes, and we were like, okay, let's start. Maybe we can get a prototype soon. And then we look on Kickstarter, and one of us sends a link to the other one, going, hey, remember that game? Someone made it.
That has happened, yes.
I've sent you all a couple of links where it's like you've shown off some games at Game Developer Days. I'm like, oh, you mean like this game? So I remember like the Scarecrow game you were doing. And I was like, you mean robots?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, it's just crazy. But yeah, I mean, that doesn't mean stop your idea. It just means you gotta do something to make it stand out more.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got to make it stand out. You got to make sure it's polished. I mean,
It is a lot of work,
and
especially now.
And there's definitely a couple of occasions where I've looked at a game and went, I'm just going to get rid of this game I was designing because I'm just going to back this thing because this looks even better than what I thought. It does happen.
Yeah, I completely agree. There's been, like about 10 years ago, I was thinking of a game, a class-driven game, deck building, stuff like that, because I just got into Thunderstone, and it's like, well, I want to do something like this, but not just a one-off thing. I want to make it, a legacy game and set it in the world of one of my stories I had been working on, and then Pathfinder came out. I'm like, you know what, I like this instead. Let's work on my part. I'll just play the game.
Exactly. Yeah. Sometimes that happens.
Yeah. That was actually very similar. The first game that I tried, the first tabletop game that I ever tried to make was an RPG, and it was basically a kind of a response to 4th edition Dungeons and Dragons, which my group didn't really like very much. So we decided to just fork out and go our own direction. And then,
Aegis?
Yeah, what's that?
Was it Aegis? Is that what you guys called it?
Aegis. Yeah, Pathfinder came out pretty good, but I think it still didn't hit exactly where we wanted. And then 5th edition came out, and we were like, oh, well, that works. And then we just sort of stopped development on that other game. For what it's worth, But I think going back to it now, I recently looked back at some of those files, and we had a lot of things that were way more complicated than they needed to be. And I've, come a long way as a designer since then.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, sometimes something else comes out that just scratches that right itch, and maybe it's not the game you were working on.
But it's something you can turn into something later. But it's
Sure.
like definitely so many things where it's like, you start off with one idea, and then where it ends up, you don't know until after you've gone through the different rounds of play testing and getting so many eyes on it. Even with, I figured like you two, whenever I feel like the current edition of Paleo Vet is a lot different from the ones that you two just kind of got together.
Oh yeah, I mean the very, very Will has posted up some design diaries, kind of talking about the early days of the design on it, and it's evolved a lot.
It has. I mean, and that happens with a lot of our games. I mean, I know DC, you've played our early versions of Winter Rabbit versus the later versions you might have played, and it's it's the same theme, but it's very different.
Yeah, that, and especially espionage. I think that's gone through the most drastic kind of crazy.
Espionage is the mechanic in search of a good game. That's really what
it'll get there. It'll get there.
It will. I had an idea up front, it didn't quite work. Then I had the brainstorm of that kind of what has become the core mechanic. And at this point, yeah, it's a really neat mechanic in search of a good game. So we'll get there eventually.
Mm-hmm. I hope so sooner than later because I really liked it.
Yeah.
Well, I was gonna open it up to either Q&A or anything else that you all want to bring up or discuss. Viewers, if you have any questions you'd like to ask them, just type in the chat and I'll be able to go from there. I know one question earlier. What was the course that Ellie's teaching? Is it at like OU or online or?
Where she's at OC, I think.
Yeah, Oklahoma Christian.
Yeah, I can't remember the exact course, but yeah, she's in there. There are. It's related, I think, more towards video game art, but you know,
Mm-hmm.
it's still.
Yeah, she has some students who are doing tabletop stuff, and she's actually also starting an Oklahoma chapter of the Game Developers Society, I think it was.
Yeah.
Or Game Developers Association. Hold on, I gotta let this dog out.
No worries.
Yeah. She's trying to set up a local chapter of the Independent Gaming Alliance or Game Developer IGDA, I think. Game Developers Alliance. Which is it's video game focused, but yeah. So she's been working on. She's up there now. And yeah, I've seen seen the portfolios for some of her students, and she's got some very talented people that she's working with up there. So
I know a lot of people with ideas, not a lot of folks with that artistic talent. I feel like there needs to be that kind of connection for sure. Yeah.
Yep. And Ellie and her husband are both working on some really neat board games themselves that whenever they get to the point, either they'll publish or we might talk to them about publishing them for them. Either way, but yeah, they got some really neat stuff they're working on. So
yeah, I think I remember that at the last Playtesters Day. I think that yeah, I remember seeing that. Anything else that you want to bring up about any games that you're working on or have worked on, or any experiences you want to share with the public at large?
I mean, when it comes to designing, get your game to a get a prototype made as quickly as you can. Get it on the table. It's kind of like when you're writing. Don't let it get stuck in your head. Get it on paper. Get it on the table as quickly as possible so you can start testing, start seeing what's there, and start iterating on it. Because you can spend years, just bouncing a story in your head or putting notes and stuff into a spreadsheet. And thinking you're going to balance things out before you make the game, and never actually go anywhere. So the sooner you make your prototype, the better, because that's when hey, does this what works, what doesn't. The first version of Churrascaria, I made that literally over a couple of hours. Took it to a game night with friends. It was broken as hell. But after the first game, everyone was like, "That was fun." But, we should change these things. And I started taking notes. I scribbled all over the cards. We played a second game. We ended up playing 4 games of that game that first night, with it getting better after each game because the core was good. It, just needed refinement. And, over about 2.5 years, it eventually became the game that, people actually own now.
Yeah.
But it all started with me going, I'm going to make this thing and I'm going to see if it works.
And I think that should be something that doesn't scare people off. Like, yeah, this isn't going to be something done overnight. It's going to take time, especially for your first one. Like, I know some people at least have buzzed and stuff like that. It's like they see Eric Lang's name over everything, but it's like that. It's taken years for him to get to that kind of status where and also.
I was going to say, some of my favorite Eric Lang games are actually his early ones.
Mm-hmm. No, I love XCOM.
Like some of his a lot of his early stuff is very esoteric and it's very different. And then he started working for Cool Mini or Not. It's all big mini games. But
yeah, but it's like there's some games where I look back on them and I'm like, oh my gosh, he had worked on this one. That's so crazy. But yeah, like everyone starts somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, I'll go ahead. Unless there's anything else you want to bring up, I think I'll go ahead and kind of bring it to a close. Will, David, thank you again so much for taking the time speaking with me, despite all the technical audio hiccups and everything like that. I am obviously a Luddite and a neophyte as far as this streaming thing goes, and I'm still learning every day something new. So thank you for your all's patience, but more importantly, thank you just for taking the time, kind of going over your experiences, and I really hope that this gets to the audience that could really use that kind of next step to getting to where they want to be as far as games, and also checking out your games whenever they're ready.
Yeah, it was fun.
Well, thanks a lot. Anytime.
Yeah.
I'm glad you had it.
Yeah. Take care, y'all. Bye
Right.
bye, Zolls.